The hospital morgue was a tomb of steel and silence, its air thick with the bite of antiseptic and the faint musk of decay. Dr. Emily Harris stood alone at 11:47 p.m., her reflection warped in the polished autopsy table. The clock's red digits pulsed like a heartbeat against the white tile walls. She adjusted her gloves, the latex snapping in the stillness, and turned to the John Doe sprawled before her, a man with no name, no story. Just a cold shell waiting for her scalpel's truth. She began the Y incision, the blade slicing through flesh with a wet whisper. The refrigeration units hummed, a low drone that seemed to vibrate in her bones. Then, it happened, a flicker in her peripheral vision. But the whisper lingered, a thread of sound tugging at her sanity. Yet the voices pressed, a tide of sound swelling in her skull. She gripped the handle, breath shallow, and pulled. She stepped toward the units, her footsteps sharp against the tile. Rows of bodas lay still, their shapes blurred under white sheets. She whipped around, but the morgue was empty. The lights stuttered, plunging the room into darkness for a split second. When they returned, her breath caught on the wall. Scrawled in thick, dripping blood were the words, "You're next." Nothing moved. The whisper stopped, the silence crashing back like a wave. Emily's scream echoed off the steel walls, sharp and frantic, as the figure stepped closer. She backed against the door, fingers clawing at the keypad, punching in the code again for 7 to 9. The light blinked red. "Come on," she whispered, voice cracking. "Please. You're exhausted, hallucinating." But the cold seeped into her bones, and the smell antiseptic laced with rot clung to her throat. She opened her eyes, scanning the room. His gaze seemed to follow her, unblinking, accusing. She tore her eyes away, focusing on the door. There had to be another way out. The emergency exits at the far end of the corridor. She could make it. The John Doe lay still on the slab, his chest split open, but his head had turned, milky eyes fixed on her. Her hand slammed against the push bar, but it didn't budge. The air turned icy, her breath clouding in frantic bursts. There was a storage closet nearby. She'd seen it earlier. She darted toward it, yanking the door open and slipping inside, pulling it shut behind her. She turned back, pressed against the door, and saw it, the figure, standing at the far end of the corridor, its eyes glinting like wet glass. Locked, a sob escaped her throat. She pounded on the door, screaming for help, but the sound died in the sealed space. Then, a soft click, like a door opening. Footsteps, slow and measured, echoed down the corridor. They stopped outside the closet. Emily held her breath, every muscle taut. The John Doe was gone. The slab was empty. The sheet crumpled on the floor. Her mind reeled, where the lights flickered, casting long shadows that twisted into claws. A figure loomed over her, its face hidden behind a surgical mask, but those eyes milky. He held a scalpel, twirling it between gloved fingers. She thrashed, but the grip was iron. Her voice whispered in her ear, hot and fetid. "Emily, it's not over yet." The figure recoiled, and she shoved past it, sprinting down the corridor. The lights flickered wildly, strobing as she ran. "Now, you pay." She passed the refrigeration units, their doors rattling softly, as if something inside was stirring. Her skin prickled, every nerve on edge. Emily's scream filled the morgue, swallowed by the hum. Then, silence. Its smile widened, teeth gleaming in the flickering light, and then it was gone. She crouched among the shelves, clutching the scalpel, trying to steady her breathing. The whispers faded, replaced by the pounding of her pulse. A shadow fell across the floor, elongated and wrong. The figure stood there, silent, its presence a weight pressing against her chest. The lights dimmed, then flared, revealing a trail of bloody footprints leading from the autopsy table to where she stood. Her own shoes were clean, but the prints were fresh, glistening. The morgue plunged into darkness for a heartbeat, the hum of the refrigeration units, the only sound. When the lights stuttered back, the figure had vanished, leaving only the blood-smeared message on the wall. But the blood glistened, wet and fresh, sliding down the tile. She lunged for the door again, pounding on it, screaming for help. The sound swelled, pressing against her skull, drowning out her thoughts. She clamped her hands over her ears, but the voices burrowed deeper, a tide of murmurs that wouldn't be silenced. The sound died in the sealed space, swallowed by the hum. She slammed the door shut, chest heaving, and backed away. The hum grew louder, a chorus of murmurs beneath it, indistinct, overlapping, insistent. Emily. The corpse's hand twitched, fingers curling inward, as if grasping for her wrist. She couldn't leave, not yet. The autopsy had to be finished. The report filed, but the morgue felt alive, its silence heavier, watching. The lights buzzed, dimming for a heartbeat before flaring back. She ignored it, focusing on the incision, the slick resistance of tissue parting under her blade. The air turned icy, her breath clouding in frantic bursts. She spun, eyes wide, and saw a figure in the shadows, tall and gaunt, its eyes glinting like wet glass. The main door loomed ahead, its keypad glowing red. She punched in the code 4729. The light blinked, then stayed red. Locked as she tried again, fingers fumbling. Nothing. Panic clawed at her throat. Emily gasped, the scalpel slipping from her grip to clatter on the floor. Her scream tore through the silence, raw and jagged, echoing off the steel doors. She stumbled back, heart slamming against her ribs. The hand lay still now, limp as before, but her pulse roared in her ears. A muscle spasm, she told herself, clinging to logic. She froze, scalpel poised mid-cut. It came again, a whisper weaving through the hum of the eunuch's Emily. Her name, spoken, soft and slow, slithered from the refrigeration wall. She spun, eyes darting to the steel doors. No one, nothing, just her reflection, pale and wide-eyed, staring back. Post-mortem reflex, nothing more. Yet her hands trembled as she retrieved the scalpel, its steel glinting under the flickering fluorescent lights. The shadows danced, stretching into shapes that didn't belong. Claws, eyes, twisted grins. Emily forced herself to resume, her breath fogging in the frigid air. Then, a sound rasping, like a breath against glass. Fatigue, she reasoned, scrubbing a hand over her face. Too many late nights. Her hand hovered over a door handle, cold seeping into her fingertips. What was she doing? There was nothing inside but bodies, daggered, seated, silent. The door swung open with a hiss, cold air rushing out in a wave of decay. If you enjoy bone-chilling horror, subscribe, hit the bell, comment your theories, and share this video or you might hear whispers in the dark next. Emily turned to the exit, desperate for air, for light beyond these walls. A shadow flickered in the corner of her eye, darting between the tables. Her knees buckled, the scalpel trembling in her grip. This wasn't real. It couldn't be. Then, from the refrigeration units, the whispers returned louder, sharper, a cacophony of voices chanting her name. It smiled, teeth sharp and wrong, and took a step toward her. Her breath came in ragged bursts, fogging in the frigid air. The whispers returned, slithering from the refrigeration units, a chorus of voices overlapping, indistinct but insistent. Emily, it's not real, she told herself, squeezing her eyes shut. Emily's stomach lurched. She hadn't moved him, gripping the scalpel like a talisman. She edged along the wall, her footsteps muffled by the hum. Halfway down the corridor, she froze. A sound wet dragging came from behind. She spun, scalpel raised, but the hallway was empty. Panic surged. She bolted for the emergency exit, the door looming ahead. The whispers crescendoed, a cacophony of voices chanting her name. Emily, Emily. It took a step toward her, slow and deliberate, then another. Emily's heart hammered, her mind racing. She had to hide. Darkness enveloped her, the closet thick with the scent of chemicals and dust. Minutes passed, or maybe hours, time lost, meaning in the dark. The door creaked open, a sliver of light cutting through the darkness. Then, it spoke, its voice a rasp of decay. Emily screamed, lunging forward with a scalpel. The blade sank into something soft, and a guttural snarl filled the air. She reached the main morgue, skidding to a halt. A hand clamped over her mouth from behind, cold and clammy. She was dragged backward, the world tilting, and then, when she awoke, she was strapped to the autopsy table, leather restraints biting into her wrists and ankles. The morgue was dim, the lights low and flickering. It was the John Doe, impossibly alive, his chest still split from her incision. "You killed me," he rasped, voice grinding like stone. "Negligence. You let me die." Emily's mind fractured. She sobbed, tugging at the straps. "I've never seen you before." He tilted his head, neck cracking. "You were my doctor. You failed me." The scalpel gleamed, crusted with blood. He leaned closer, the blade hovering over her chest. The darkness claimed her, leaving only whispers to linger in the void. Emily's mind spiraled, her thoughts fracturing under the weight of terror. The leather straps dug into her wrists, anchoring her to the icy steel of the autopsy table. Above her, the John Doe stood, his lifeless eyes piercing hers, unblinking and accusing. His chest, still split open from her own incisions, glistened with a dark, viscous fluid that seeped onto the table. October 13th, 11:47 p.m. Room 213. You were on call. You ignored the signs. You let me slip away. He leaned in, his rancid breath washing over her. You failed me. In his gnarled hand, a scalpel glinted, its edge stained with decay. He lifted the scalpel, its tip hovering above her chest. Now, you'll feel it too. October 13th, a chaotic night. A patient lost after surgery. Emily seized the chance, twisting her wrist against the strap. She unfastened the other straps, adrenaline surging, and rolled off the table as the John Doe whirled around, his eyes blazing. She stumbled to the exit, slamming the keypad 4729. The door hissed open, and she fled into the corridor, the whispers trailing her like a swarm. Her sweat-slicked fingers found the buckle, fumbling to release it. The John Doe muttered incoherently, his back to her, as whispers slithered from the steel doors. Emily. Emily, a chilling chorus growing louder, tall and skeletal. Its skin clung to its bones, eyes like voids. It grinned, teeth jagged, and reached for her. She'd been delayed, swamped with cases. By the time she reached him, he was gone. Routine, they'd called it, unavoidable. But now, doubt festered. Had she overlooked something critical? She screamed as the ground gave way, plunging her into darkness. The figure laughed, a brittle, shattering sound, but she climbed, desperation fueling her. The whispers unified. Choose, Emily, stay and atone, or leave and forget. The pit deepened, yet she reached the top, hauling herself into a void. The hallway stretched endlessly, tiles gleaming under flickering lights. The air reeked of rot, thick and cloying. Her hands sank into something soft. Above, the figure leered, its grin widening. A whisper drifted from the refrigeration units. Emily, you belong here, Emily, with us. Their eyes glinted like wet glass, watching her with malevolent intent. Whispers slithered through the room, a cacophony of voices, niggling, guilty. You let us die. Each word a dagger of accusation. Their hands cold, clammy reached for her, dragging her toward the autopsy table. Above her the John Doe loomed, his chest still split open, his eyes blazing with vengeance. He held the scalpel, its blade gleaming with cruel intent. She thrashed, but their grip was relentless, their touch burning like ice. She ran, her pulse pounding, but the morgue twisted around her, doors appearing, corridors bending impossibly. But as the blade touched her skin, something shifted. The lights were steady, the refrigeration units humming softly. Her heart pounded, but the terror ebbed, replaced by a numb calm. She pushed herself up, her limbs heavy, and saw the John Doe lying on the slab, motionless, his chest intact. The autopsy hadn't begun. The hum of the refrigeration units faded, leaving only silence and the faintest echo of whispers in the dark. The pain was distant, unreal. She blinked, and the morgue dissolved into mist. She glanced at the clock. 11:47 p.m. Time had reset, or perhaps it had never passed. She shook her head, trying to dispel the fog in her mind. Then, a whisper in her ear, in her own voice. You can't escape. You're already one of us. Doors appeared and vanished, the tiles beneath her feet slick with blood. She froze, staring at her reflection, pale, gaunt, her eyes clouded and dead. Her skin was mottled, veins blackened beneath the surface. She approached the John Doe, her movements mechanical, and began the Y&C. The blade parted flesh with a wet whisper, the routine anchoring her to reality. A corpse stared back, its lips curling into a grotesque smile. She completed the autopsy with precision, her hands steady, her mind clear. When she finished, she stepped back, a sense of finality settling over her. She screamed, shattering the glass with her fist. Pain lanced through her hand, blood dripping onto the floor, but the horror remained. She ran, her footsteps echoing, but the morgue shifted around her, trapping her in its labyrinthine grip. Yes, she whispered back, her voice steady. I'm here. She stood in the morgue, but it was the fluorescent lights flickered erratically, casting jagged shadows that writhed like living things. The refrigeration units rattled violently, their hum now a guttural growl, as if something inside was clawing to escape. The air was thick with the stench of decay, pressing against her throat. She thrashed helplessly as the blade descended, grazing her skin with a searing sting. Blood welled, a thin trickle against the cold steel. Her scream echoed, swallowed by the morgue's suffocating silence. "You don't remember me," he rasped, his voice a guttural echo that seemed to crawl from the shadows of the morgue. "But I remember you, Dr. Harris. You were there when I died. You let it happen." She yanked against the restraints, the leather groaning but refusing to yield. Her breath caught, panic surging like a tide. I've never seen you before," she cried, her voice trembling with desperation. Her reflection in a shard of glass showed dead, clouded eyes. She was dead. This was her purgatory. The John Doe tilted his head, a jerky, unnatural motion that twisted her gut. The date jolted her, a buried memory clawing its way to the surface. "I'm sorry," she whispered, tears stinging her eyes. "I didn't mean to. Sorry doesn't bring me back," he snarled, his lips peeling into a grotesque grin. Her heart thundered, a frantic drumbeat against her ribs. Suddenly, the John Doe froze, his head jerking upward. The fluorescent lights flickered violently, casting jagged shadows across the sterile walls. A deep rumble vibrated through the floor, like the morgue itself was stirring. He turned, distracted, staring at the refrigeration units. With a final tug, her hand broke free. His roar followed a primal sound of fury and anguish, but she didn't look back. She rounded a corner and stopped dead. A new figure loomed, not the John Doe, but something worse. "Welcome, Emily," it said, its voice, a tapestry of whispers. "We've been waiting." The floor cracked beneath her, fissures spidering outward. The walls wept blood, crimson streaks staining the tiles. She landed in a pit, pain exploding through her body. The bodies twitched, eyes opening milky, ravenous. They reached for her, and she scrambled back, trapped. Horror crashed over her. Her hands pale, mottled veins blackened, but a flicker of defiance flared. She shoved through the corpses, clawing toward the pit's edge. An ornate door stood before her, carved with cryptic symbols. She hesitated, guilt-heavy, then grasped the handle. White light engulfed her, and she fell, weightless. She awoke in the morgue, standing over the John Doe scalpel, in hand. The clock read 11:47 p.m. A dream, a nightmare. Relief washed through her, but as she began the autopsy, she saw it etched faintly on the wall. "You're next." The scalpel slipped, clattering to the floor. Emily's world fractured, reality splintering into shards of light and shadow. She stumbled back, her breath shallow, and saw them figures lurking in the corners, indistinct and shrouded in darkness. Her pulse thundered as she turned to flee, but the corridors twisted, elongating into an impossible maze. A mirror materialized before her, its surface rippling like water. The figures closed in, their whispers sharpening into shrieks. "You can't escape, Emily, you're one of us now." They forced her onto the slab, leather straps snaking around her limbs. "You belong here," he rasped, his voice a chorus of the damned. "With us." The scalpel descended, and Emily's scream tore through the morgue, a primal sound of terror and despair. She awoke with a gasp, lying on the cold floor of the morgue. A dream, a nightmare. Relief washed through her, mingled with lingering dread. With trembling hands, she picked up the scalpel, its weight familiar and grounding. As she worked, the morgue felt different, quiet, almost peaceful. The whispers were gone, the shadows stilled. She turned to leave, but a faint sound stopped her, a whisper, soft and insistent. "Emily." She paused, a small smile playing on her lips. The voice was familiar now, almost comforting. The lights flickered one last time as she exited the morgue, the door closing behind her with a soft click.